So good evening. It's Tuesday, April 23rd. It's 6:04
Recording in
PM.
progress.
Good evening. It's April 23rd. It's 6:04 PM, and I'm calling this special meeting of the Groton Board of Education to order. The agenda for this meeting is to discuss the budget. So I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
So you had requested that I get a really nice, neat chart for you that looked at all the work that has been done up to the 7.91, and that's that two-page list. I worked with Dave and Lori and the team today, and we really tried to clean it up, and they double-checked it to make sure. So the first page says non-personnel efficiencies reductions, and that was at the tune of $1,771,110. And then the second page is really the staffing page. And that has, you know, our ARP ESSER, and then some, I think. But that's at the tune of $5,321,814, and $321,814. And then the total
Right.
that we reduced is,
So can we,
Which ones do you want up on the
is-
screen?
yeah, Clint, can we
7
share for
million,
those that
so-
are online?
so that's that two-page. And I did not want to pass it out in email. First of all, we were working on it into the ninth hour. It's the work, what I've worked on all weekend long. The admin council had come together and offered some of their suggestions, and worked really hard last week. And for this document, this was the work that you all have done with me and the team, getting to the 7.91. So that's what we're putting up first.
If you just give us a
This one?
minute, we're going
Is
to...
this the one you want, the efficiencies?
Yeah, we're going to bring that up for those online.
So,
So I'm understanding you to say that this is what the town council started with before it did any reductions? Any further reductions?
right, this is what we all had worked on for, you know, a month and a half or whatever time frame. And, you know, I know that one of the first things on the list was the OPEB, and we did get permission from John Burt to put that off for the year, and that was in the reserve. So it wasn't the actual OPEB, that was reserve. And then, of course, we worked with Sam on transportation, and STA and curtain charges. There's bus transportation. You know, I don't have to go through the whole list, but we really looked at all the different line items. Professional learning, clubs, so some things were moved to the grants, and some things were just moved off entirely. There's another one there.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is just me, right? Since this is already in our budget and it's our starting point, let's not rehash it.
Okay.
Let's-
I just wanted you, I know that some people really wanted to, you've gotten so many charts and graphs, bits and
I
pieces.
know.
We wanted to clean it up for you so you'd have something
Yes.
that makes sense. I wish I had done it even sooner,
That's okay.
but,
let's
you know,
not-
Dave
let's-
is working full-time behind the scenes. He's coming in tomorrow, so we still have him, you know, definitely helping support us with anything I need, so.
Yeah. Like I said, let's not rehash it because it's already part of our new base. We can all read this at our own time. I like to spend the time going through how we need to get to the 2.7, or I'd prefer to go through new.
Yeah, I just don't think that this document had ever been seen. There was not a summary of all the different ones, so.
Yeah, but we can
We've
still,
now- yeah.
but we can still read.
Yes.
I recognize some of this from when we were doing the work.
And I-
Yes, it wasn't all on one page.
Right. So
I
this is
agree
just
on
And
sort
it's
of-
neatly organized, so you
You know?
have your
Just-
supply list or your
Yep, just for reference.
non-personnel, and then you have your personnel.
Yep.
Yeah, I personally feel that it would be advantageous to go through this.
So I apologize for disagreeing.
I'm sorry, but it's like a waste of time, because
I-
we can all read it
I
on
don't.
ours.
Well, yeah, we can, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, at least from some people that I've talked to, that, our starting point was 125 fewer people working in our schools. And I think some people think that that might be after we take off the additional positions with the town. So I do see, appreciate kind of clarifying some of this. And my counts were slightly different, so I appreciate that as well.
Okay, we'll have to touch base, make sure we got it all counted. But I do know that Dave and Lori have gone back item by item, person by person, to just make sure, and all of our notes that we were taking along the way. So they really did a good job trying to make sure that we've got it as accurate as possible, because we're going to need that, because this has already been removed.
Yeah, and I do think the RTM should see this, so that they, because there's a narrative out there that we didn't
Didn't do much,
do
at the
much.
tune
that
of
we
$7
didn't-
million.
We didn't look at the budget. And so, I think that helps for them to be educated. So,
Okay,
is there any other discussion that anybody wanted to bring up about that document before we go to the other one, or?
One brief thing. Cut Board of Education travel budget by 50%. Does that mean that there's?
Matthew, your microphone's not on.
I apologize, thank you. It says on this thing that we cut the Board of Education travel budget by 50% to the tune of 68,000 plus. Does that mean that there's still a Board of Education travel budget?
Yeah, that means you have another 50%.
That's,
So some of that was, used to be travel to a national conference that was quite expensive, but we don't belong to the national organization. We have not belonged to it in a while, and nobody's taken that trip. I think the last one who took it was Rita,
Well, I'm assuming
years
that's
ago.
IB as well, right? Would that be the?
No, this is Board of Ed budget.
Oh, Board of Ed, sorry.
Oh, you think it's district-wide? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's where it gets confusing. People use Board of Ed and
Oh, yeah.
district
I was
sort of
thinking the Board of
interchangeably.
Ed, because they have travel, too.
Just like when the vehicle goes by and it says Board of Ed, it's like not actually our,
Yeah, you're not like riding
we're
in.
not actually riding it, yeah.
That's not how we get around town.
No?
yeah, we all get our own cars.
So, did I hear?
Yeah, I just wanted to express support for the review of this, so that we have a firm understanding.
Yeah.
I've also heard the narrative, and we heard the narrative at the, well, I've heard it a couple times, some off the record and some on the record, as far as like how much homework we've done on this budget. So I think it'd be good to clarify what our starting point was, your initial proposed, the 13.54 number, and what it took to get to the 7.9 number.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you all had put that in my head.
Yes, and I
Took
also,
it and ran with it.
I also want to say,
I thought, I was really confused. Lori and I had looked at several of the documents, so we said we need one clean document.
all right, and I do appreciate the notes on the side here as far as like the anticipated impacts on students.
Right.
Again,
I mean, I think that's really important. I think it's important to share with them. I've already said in the Parent Square messaging that none of these are easy. We don't want any of these to happen. As a matter of fact, I don't even really want this to get out too publicly. But I do think that they need to know and I'm shifting gears, so I don't know if I'm too premature, but I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the legwork we've done to get the word out too, so we'll switch over.
Yeah, so before we transition to that, is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss or point out about the first document? the
Jay, I don't
reductions?
know if you see my hand, but it's up. I just want to offer my support for reviewing this at this meeting.
Okay. Is there anything specific that anybody wants to?
So the page you're looking at, Dr. Ackerman, is the page of non-personnel, and it's really line by line, everything from OPEB to transportation, to travel, to food purchases. We have an unfunded food, lunch balance because we're probably close to up to 80, well, we're anticipating $80,000 that we're going to have to pay this year for people who have not paid their balance. And Ernie's done some great things at trying to get people, it looks like you're having problems with your lunch balance. Here's the paperwork to fill out for free and reduced lunch. Please send it to me. We'll work together and we'll make sure we can, get you the resources if you need it. So we've been very caring and responsive, not, So, and then there were some programs that because of this new DODEA grant and some of the other funding that we have with Title I, those are very appropriate, and they have field trips anyway, so these are the field trips that they're going to be doing. I'm looking at other buckets, reducing district PD and workshops. Some of the prep for the workshops and planning, I think that was under your hat, Dr.
I'm sorry,
Piazza.
which line again?
That goes down, I'm just kind of working my way through the non-personnel, so it's kind of a little more than halfway through, 101. And our teachers do
Oh, yeah.
a lot of train the trainer, where they do some of the professional development, and that's really well received.
Yeah, we try to do that, and we provide
Instead of bringing someone in,
time for the prep.
yeah, and they're here, they're getting paid for, so we're not paying them to present, but under their contract, they get planning time to kind of prepare for, if they're presenting. So, and then you see the mentor supplies. Matthew, that mentoring program is alive and well. We have a dinner coming up on Thursday.
I'll be there.
I know, and Ernie's actually doing it gratis through his enterprise fund, so we're not even paying for the dinner, so much appreciated. And then some instructional supplies with special ed have been reduced. Of course, if anything is needed, I think each special education teacher gets a lump sum amount for their supplies, but if they needed more because of a child with an IEP, they would just go to Denise and we would find the funds through probably IDEA.
Just a quick question. The last three numbers, last three items, right to read, HVAC testing, and budgeting software. I noticed that they're listed as they're an addition, not a deletion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Because those were the three things, I think, towards the end. The HVAC, we have to do by law. It's one of those mandates, as well as the right to read, and we're doing a lot of good work with that, and we'll need those resources because we want to get started next year. And then, of course, the budgeting software. I think that is, you guys have really shared that this is kind of cumbersome, and Dave coming in had said that, the way it's kind of archaic, and so he had even advised us to, update that.
But, as Matthew pointed out, so we can say we're going to spend $180,000 on HVAC testing. However, what are we going to find? And what will it cost to remediate? We have no idea,
Right, and that,
absolutely no idea.
And we are not having to do our brand-new buildings, right? I understand the three newest buildings, we don't have to have tested. Is that correct? They're still okay, or?
That's what they told me, but I'm waiting for it in writing.
Okay, all right.
But
We also
unless this testing's done, we can't even apply for grants.
Right. And should we apply in December, and Shannon, I don't know if you saw it in the board notes, but she has a comprehensive list of all of the grants she's been working on, and she's going after everything, anything that has a tutor on it. And DODEA has a lot of the tutors and, some of the expenses that we can't take on in the operation budget, so.
And I don't remember either, the 180 for HVAC, is that for 4 or 7 schools? Like, did we
It was
budget?
6. I think it was 6.
Well, their HVAC testing is not for the new schools, so it's the remaining.
But it does include this
Four.
building because
It does include this
there
building,
are classes held here.
And
Yeah.
doesn't it also include Pleasant Valley?
not Pleasant Valley, that doesn't belong to us. Mary Morrison.
That was
does.
simply for the review, we didn't incorporate any possible, as Jay's sort of alluding to. Okay.
This is just the testing.
Right. But again, if we do go for this grant, we're going to have to go back to the town council because they have to agree that they'll support this, because grants usually come in back to us like 58%. So they basically have to cover, the HVAC that is requested in the grant, the full amount, but they get then reimbursed 58% typically. So we'll have to be supported, and I think that was the problem a couple years ago. We did not get that support, so I could not put in the grant. I did try. And then the personnel. With teaching staff, as you know, we've run the schedule. That was really important in the middle school and the high school. We did have some retirements. We will be filling some of them, a lot of math retirements, so we do need those math teachers. But through the good work of the administration in both the middle school and the high school, we actually have run schedules. They're not all complete, but we really feel pretty confident that those positions that were removed through retirement or attrition, won't hold us back, that we still will have, I mean, those class sizes are really closer to like the 22 to 24 number these days. There are some smaller classes, there's resource rooms, there's classes that are small, co-taught with special education students in it, and regular ed, and we still have specialized classrooms. But I would say for the most part, they've really come to a good solid size. And even with the IB and AP classes, they've done some tremendous work. The whole team, Amy McKenna, Carmita, and Matt, in bringing teachers together to make sure a student who's in an IB course would also be able to get AP credit. So they've aligned the two curriculums so that, or they could get ECE, so UConn credit. So a child signing up for some of these classes, they could get a certificate or, an IB, course along with either AP or ECE. So that's really filled up the classes too. And then elementary, we watch like a fine, we watch, monitor, because I've told you, 750 come in, 600 leave us, and it varies. So I think Charles Barnum, I'm looking at my Charles Barnum teachers, they could end up starting the year, especially the early grades, with 22 in a classroom or more. And then maybe partway through the school, they might have more like 18, and then they get 4 more kids. So it's up and down all year long, and so it's hard to really predict, but we felt like we were careful in doing so. And there's been some retirements with the EL and the IB coordinators, and we're not replacing them. We actually have a teacher leader doing that. And, all of those things, some of them with the MYP specialists, that was during the MSAP grant, and those people have retired, and they might be able to do a little work on the side for us to, work with teachers, but that's not a position needed. And then Sam's department with custodians, maintenance that have retired. He's really done a good job looking at all of that, and you'll see even some additional positions that we found going forward. And IT, I think your budget, Clint, has really, we're recycling a lot of computers and Chromebooks and making sure they're in good working order, but we're not buying all new. And then we've got our Promethean board, so the only thing we have are our leases for our teachers, and we've got the DODEA resources, or the DOD supplement for that for next year. And then, of course, our tutors. That's going to be really challenging, as you guys were saying. But like I said, I'm trying to get every grant, because I do want every school to have SEL, ELA, and math in their building, and, and we'll do everything we can.
Susan, on the chart, it says a business education teacher. Is that reduction going to impact our mandated financial literacy?
Not at all, no.
Okay.
We still have people in the business department. And that certification can also be a math certification. It can be business, humanities, too, I think. It's under humanities, so.
Yeah, I believe so.
Lori, I don't know if you remember that. We'll have to check, but I kind of recall that it's
Thank you.
flexible. And then, you just keep seeing temporary help, the overtime, some community coordinator hours, but you'll see that we actually took even more in the new budget, so.
So can I ask, how much was the Art Besser grant in this year? Do you know about the total of that for 2024?
I feel like it was about $600,000, but that's a number that sticks out in my head. Do you remember,
I
Lori?
was thinking it was a little less than that.
I'll look and see if I have it.
I think,
It was 6 million when we started.
yeah, for some reason I was thinking, but I think one thing that would be nice for the community to see is this bottom line number of cuts that we've done, $7,092,000 or $93,000.
To tell you the truth, I was shocked because while we did all this work, I didn't really put it all together. And I kept saying 4.5, and that was the percent. But this is the number of actual cuts.
So, yeah, I mean, where I'm going with this is we had a grant of $6 million, or I was thinking it was $5 million and something last year, but maybe we'll have that number soon. In September of '24, we're going to open the doors, spending $7.1 million less, with that many fewer in staff, supplies, just money to do things that's part of education. So we've gone above and beyond in this budget by cutting, like, I believe it's going to be well over $1 million on top of Art Besser from, what our students enjoy this year.
I know.
And need this year.
And we'll need next year.
And, agreed. I mean, as you know, I personally felt we went a little bit too deep on the cut just at this, but it is nice having this number that we have cut over $7 million from the amount of money that we're spending this year. Some of that is grant, or most of it is grant, but it is how much smaller our system is, or how much less our system is going to be supported next year.
Can I answer the question about the Art Besser? So the total Art Besser funds over 3 years was $6,572,859, of which FY '24 was $2,410,982 for the year.
So 2.4 million was Art Besser
For 2024.
for '24.
Correct.
Are there any other grants? So we cut $4.5 million out of our budget already?
On top of what was
On
being,
top of the
the
Art
grant.
Besser.
yeah,
So I feel like some people had confusion
right.
That's all
that we
did.
didn't do our job. At least I was told that. And we went, I feel, too deep, and some other people may be still confused on this budget, but I personally think that this is significant, just what we have here. So I appreciate having this put into a easy-to-read scenario for
Well,
the
it
RTM
was your
tomorrow.
idea, and I appreciate you giving me the idea. I wanted to do it anyway because I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
red
well,
line and
it
the-
was 30 hours of
That's-
meetings and lots of changes.
So, I mean, I think we made a good faith effort. We didn't go to the town with a lot of fat in the
No.
budget. There was no fat in this budget because
It was insurance. Insurance is
It's
driving
all about
this budget.
insurance.
It's all about insurance, and even McBride knows that.
Well, he basically said it, and, and you know what? Yes, the grant has gone away, but the need
That's not.
has not. It's still there. None of these folks were sitting at a desk doing nothing all day long. These folks were actively engaged with our students, and this was painful enough, and now to be faced with another cut is just...
And just the way it was done, I have to say that the idea of taking on the nurses was because we no longer had the VNA. And John Burt had said that he could handle it as a contract, and he had 1.3 million in the contract because it was last year's money. And I said, I think we can make it more efficient and probably still keep last year's money and be able to work out. But I said, and I'd be happy to employ him, but you need to transfer the funds. And there was a conversation with Denise, Lori, and I on Zoom with John, and I'm just being very honest. We said that what really needed to happen was that the funds needed to be transferred by July 1, but we didn't want to have it involved with the budget. And you recall it even as well as I do, but I do believe he questioned that and said, maybe I should transfer it over now, or you add it to your budget now.
Yeah, he originally indicated he wanted us to add it to the budget, and you had responded that you didn't want to do that because they were holding the funds in the town budget, and that we would just do a transfer after the budget was finalized. So that's what we talked about at that meeting.
And then we had another
It
meeting.
seemed like we
He was
had
agreeing.
an
Yeah.
understanding of that, because we wanted to clarify before we put offers out that that funding would transfer for July 1st. And it was, we all had the understanding leaving that meeting that it was just a matter of transferring the dollars from one budget to the next. And, you know, he also talked about some comments around how he would do that. You know, did he need to do some type of pass-through from us to the town, or was he just going to transfer the funds in total to us after? So I'm not sure where the misunderstanding came in, but.
So if
Well, I
the
know you asked,
RTM,
can I just finish this? I know that you and Denise, we all asked, so John, if we give this contract, we need to know that the funds are secured on the board side to pay for this. We asked that question like 3 times, and he said yes.
And it is from that meeting, right? Because when they gave us the amount to reduce, they said go from 7.91 to 4.5. They did not touch the 1.3. That 1.3 is going to come over in total. That's how I took it.
Well, so they,
And
but they cut
that's
3
why.
million, and we had already talked to him about not doing it that way.
But regardless, that amount of money that's coming from the town to the Board of Ed is going to be 1.3, 1.3. It's not getting touched. With the funds that we are reducing is going from our 7.9 to 4.5. That's the true cost that they're asking for us. When they stated it with the nursing, the reduction would be 6.5 because they added the 1.3. There is no, the town is taking 1.3 million and reducing it and giving it to us, and that's how I understood it. The
Well-
1.3 is as whole. Because when they said their thing, it was like 6.5 reduction, and that included the 1.3. If you remove that 1.3, the reduction is 4.5.
yes, but the RTM can only restore us back to 7.91%.
We still
So
have
no
to cut
matter what,
1.3.
We come out 1.3 in the hole, even if RTM fully restores us to the 7.91 number.
But they,
Whereas if it had been brought over in July, it would not, and it would not have increased the MBR for that year either.
Yeah, exactly.
is that a clarification that you can make with the town council? Because we're working at 7.9 to 4.5, and this is after effects. So when RTM looks at it, it needs to go from 7.9 to 4.5, and this 1.3 is after the fact. You add it after.
Well, I guess I'm a little
It's a
concerned,
little confusing.
because this is all verbal conversation. We don't have anything in writing, no MOU.
3 of us and 1 of him.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to get a handle on exactly the dynamics without it being kind of plotted out and written and sort of committed to, so that we could see it in a documented form. So I understand what Jen is saying, and I guess I didn't have a full understanding of that conversation, that there was a possibility of moving the 1.3 over outside of the Board of Ed budget. That seems like that'd be a good workaround, so it doesn't increase the MBR, because that's sort of a middle ground between the concerns of the council and the concerns of the board. However, I am not in favor of moving forward on assumptions or verbal agreements. If that's going to be done, if it's going to happen in July, then we need to have an MOU stating clearly exactly what's going to happen and when. So, and also the RTM would need to know this so that they have full disclosure of information to deliberate on. So, I mean, if that's a thing that's possible, and also the council would need to be aware of that because maybe they're not quite clear on exactly what the dynamics are either. It was a little hard to track the conversation in that meeting because there's a lot of stuff bouncing back and forth. And a lot of extraneous narrative attached to the numbers. So I would ask that, we get that offer in writing and see if that's real or not. It's, I want to believe that's real. I want to believe that, that could be a good workaround to get out of this dilemma, at least with it comes to the nurses. But
Yeah.
I'd want to see the dynamics kind of laid out very clearly.
Okay.
Is it possible to talk to Mr. Burt tomorrow or Mayor Franco? Because it's two distinct items, and that's how I took it when they told us
So
at that
you were
meeting.
thinking too, it was two separate things?
It's distinct, because the way they even worded it was like, whatever the number was, remember, there was some confusion on the number?
Yeah.
There was like, and so whatever the number was, and they said that's 4.5%. And then they said, oh, yes, when you put the 1.3, it's really 6.5% reduction. It's two distinct items, the way they presented it.
But the RTM can only restore to 7.91.
No,
It
no, I
can't
know.
restore to 7.91 plus the 1.3 million.
But
So you
that's,
come out.
that's after the fact. It was like, here's us, 7.9. They're requesting us to go to 4.5. I believe, and this is where hopefully we can get confirmation, that they can go back to 7.5, and then that 1.3 is distinct based on your conversation. That's how I took the meeting. And it could be all, am I the only one who heard her that way?
Certainly Go back to John and, I did remind him of our conversation. You reminded him of our conversation.
Jay, with regard Ian's comment about having things in writing, rather than have another phone conversation, which would again be oral, would it be useful, I'm not advocating, I'm asking the question, would it be useful for you and/or Jay or both of you to write a letter based on our conversation? It is our understanding that, and please get back to us. And then you've put it in writing, and we'll get something back that will respond to our concerns.
We could do something like that.
All right,
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Who's our audience? If I can put it in those terms. We're going to go in front of the Education Committee, and then we're going to go in front of the whole RTM. And the RTM may or may not do X. That sounds like there's a point beyond which we needn't bother hoping for anything, that whatever is, there's a lot that's been done already. So, and I'm just raising this. We've heard about the town manager. Does the town manager play a further role other than perhaps advocating in front of the RTM, the way we would be advocating possibly on the other side, if you will? Or is his role done? We talk about the council. Isn't their role done? What are the RTM's concerns? What's the Education Committee's concern? What's the RTM's concern? What are they working off of that we can address? Are they confused, or are they simply working off of a different philosophy, which is, we don't care what your internal workings are. We're not really interested in this, that, or the other. We start from, this is all you get, make it work. I don't know. I don't know what we're working at. So, first one, and this is not to disrespect, obviously, the council or John Burt, but where we are in the process is, we're before the RTM. Does he have a further role to play other than perhaps advocating against our position?
I understood there were two audiences. One was the RTM, but the second audience was was John Burt with regard to the nurses. And if John is willing to work with us on the nurses in a way that we hope he would, then he's the audience for that conversation. And that's what I was referring to in terms of a letter. The second audience is for the balance of the stuff, and that would be the RTM.
Right.
But I do see two discrete audiences.
Well, I'm wondering where it is in the budget process, if that was the number that was put in the town side,
Yep.
you know, with all of this happening, is that number for VNA still there? Has it been removed? Because they said they were gonna give it to us. And they gave it to us, but then they took away 3 million.
Yep,
So-
but they never said, if we watched the video, right? I guess that's what's good about recording. They never said, hey, 7.9%, that's like an equivalent 2.5 million, plus you need to cover the 1.3, that's coming over. They never said that. The 1.3 is like a
I would
a
love for
debit
that to
on
be
one side
true.
and a credit on the other, a credit on one side and the debit on the other side, and has nothing to do with the 7.9. That's how I took it. Otherwise, those percentages that they quoted us would not have been, oh, you need to go down to 4.5, and after, it would really be 6.5, because that's the 1.3 coming back. They have never said 2.5 plus 1.3, and that you need to go down 3.8. They never said that. So I think we just need to go back.
2.8 million. I came up
Yes.
with the 1.5 million, right on my head, as they were doing that. But then
Yep.
I thought, well, where are the nurses?
Exactly. It's a
This is
lift
another
and load,
1.3,
but let's
that's
get
the
it
2.8.
confirmed.
Adrian?
Yeah, I believe we should confirm, because
Yes.
at some point, our mayor said, if you include the nurses, we actually cut 600,000 or something like that from our budget.
Right.
And I asked that question because I was confused, and the response was 4.5%, we're cutting your 7.91% to 4.5, and then adding the nurses, so it's 6%. So that was that was my interpretation, but we need to get clarification. Obviously, this is very important.
Yes.
And then separately, if the RTM is held to not being able to increase more than what we had asked for, which was, I forget what it was, 87 million or something.
They can't go
7.9.
above 7.9.
They can't go, but can they move the town side back, the nurses back into the town budget?
No.
No, because that's creating jobs in the town that they're not authorized to do. It'll go right back into the general fund.
Right, and actually, I was forwarded an email. The RTM had asked some questions to the town manager, and that subject was actually was discussed in the email. He responded to the RTM members and the counselors, and like I said, that email was forwarded to me. I just forwarded it to the whole board. And basically, what Jay just said, they can't put the nurses back in the town. We have to bring them on as Board of Ed employees.
Well, then they have to pay for them.
Or,
No,
But
but-
I just want to follow up, Adrian's understanding of what happened in the meeting as far as the 6% and the 4.5% figure, that was my takeaway as well. Because it was a reduction down to 4.5, and then they added back in the 1.3 million for the nurses and said, there you go.
But if you think about it, from a math perspective, if they're going to move in 1.3 million, that's 1.5% of our budget. So the 7.9, to do apples to apples comparison, the 7.9 would have to be increased by 1.5. And if they want us to go down, then we'll be at that 6. They can't do 7.9 apple, and oh, by the way, you now need to take the nurses, apple and an orange. So Yeah, the 1.3 over our budget is roughly 1.5, and if you take the 4.5% that they told us to go down, and then you add back that 1.4 or 1.5, it's that 6% that they're referring to. It's two discrete actions.
And the RTM can't go above 7.91, which means we come out 1.3 under.
No, they
I
can't.
hope
It
you're
was
right,
it was a deal.
I
It
hope
was,
you're
like,
right.
really
Yeah.
fast.
but I'm
and-
afraid that
So-
they cannot go above the 7.91.
But the 7.91 did not include the nurses.
That's
No.
correct.
But it,
And that's the problem.
right, and the thing is, basically, like what the town council just confirmed is, with that vote, is that we own the nurses.
Right.
They're in our budget now, which it does make sense from a certain point of view that,
Yeah, we were
you know, they're gonna be
happy to
Board
do
of Ed
that.
employees.
We were happy
Yeah.
to do that.
The question
you
is,
know?
so we would have to
But we needed
compensate.
the funding, and he knew
Yeah,
that,
Yeah.
that I needed the funding, and it
Right.
wasn't in my budget.
right.
And that expectation was to bring it over July 1.
We asked for 7.91. There was 1.3 in the town. My understanding was we were going to get that over and above the 7.91.
So that would be the.
That's how I interpret
Right.
it.
So that would be the best case scenario, is like somehow
Yeah, that
we
would-
convince the RTM to restore the 7.91 number, and we get the MOU established with the town manager and the town council, that the 1.3 is a one-time, you know, transfer over in July after the budget.
And that would have no impact on the MBR.
And that would not affect the NBR beyond the 7.91 increase.
If they did it in
Were
July.
we
If they didn't,
told,
is that my,
Yeah, and especially if they use some of that excess cost.
right.
Yep.
were we told that we needed to include the nurses in our budget for the budget that we voted on? Like officially told that that was going to be something that we were going to have to?
No.
So this, to me, our Board of Education voted on a budget that did not include the nurses.
Because it was-
Intentionally, because the town knew that this was coming. And we should have been told that we had to absorb a whole nother thing.
That never
So
came
I-
to the board. It never came to me because we were in the middle of, we were trying to look to see if the VNA could be shifted from Yale to Hartford Healthcare because I got Dr. Horgan kind of involved. And he was working on it, and we were having conversations with them, and then we were having conversations with the VNA, so we could price it out. And there was a lot of legwork going on, and we wanted to be able to tell our nurses something so that they wouldn't go across the bridge to New London, because there are other towns influenced, so, but we were never told. Only in that phone conversation, he said something about, well, you might need to put it in the budget. And I said, well, I'm not doing that because you said we were going to do this July 1. I said, it's not in our budget. I think that's what I said, it's not in the board's budget. And we were never told, as the board was never told. I mean,
I think we're worrying about something, so let's try to get the answer tomorrow.
All right.
But let's focus in on what we can control to try to figure out what, in case they do go forward with this, we're not caught with our heads in the sand. So, sorry.
that's all right, I think that's.
Move it along.
Yeah, I would, just to put some percentages on the record, and somebody can redo these numbers in case I was wrong.
Yeah.
But just going back to the cuts that we've already made, we cut our budget, we cut what were our offerings, our people, and other services and materials and things by $4.7 million, which totals 5.8%, not including ARP ESSER. If you include the ARP ESSER money, we cut it by, I believe, 9.3, no, sorry, I didn't do that calculation. So
We're 7 point,
is 7 over 81, whatever that is.
Slightly less than 10%.
7 divided by 81. So if, including ARP ESSER with the town council's cuts on top of our other cuts, so what we are effectively seeing next year, so $2.8 million of the council's cut, plus our cuts, which of 7 million. It's going to be 12.2%. Is that correct?
So,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I have to redo that.
so,
Well, it's effectively 10 million out of the
Yeah, it's, all right.
7.9 million.
9.9,
yeah, so,
9.9 divided by 81.
So you're talking like 9%.
Yeah, 12%.
Oh,
It's
12?
the total of what we're losing, it's including the ARP ESSER, but what we're,
Okay.
how much less money that we have to fund schools next year than we had this year. 12.2%. And then even taking the ARP ESSER money out of that percentage, it's 9.3%.
That's what I was looking
When you include
at.
what the town cut. So we're essentially being asked to do something similar next year as we did this year with 10% less money. And that's not even an accounting for inflation, which I'm sure everybody knows.
And contracts, which we have agreed on. I mean, they've been negotiated, and, I mean, we cannot, and healthcare.
So I just hope that the town councilors now see what these numbers are, because they said they couldn't understand our budget, or some members had alluded that they didn't really understand our budget in some of the specific line items, and some of it was confusing. But when we go back and look at percentages cut, I have to look into the record, because I'd like to see what other part of the town has had to cut anywhere near as much as we were forced to cut.
yep. I mean, like Susan and I sort of mentioned it to her, like, we have contracts where we have salary increases, and obviously the health and benefits that is associated with those positions. In order to give our teachers those increases, we need to take it out of operations, and that is one department out of the entire town. I don't know if they asked that of Department of Public Works, whatever, the Finance Department,
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec,
Police?
Police, 3 polices.
So,
We got 3 police chiefs.
are any of those contractual increases, right? Because it's the same across the board, right? They use our same health plan that we do. Are they being asked to remain neutral? So that's a valid question. We just have more people on our payroll side. And so, as far as I heard during that meeting, that there's, all of those other departments receive some form of an increase. And I'm sure it's related to health and benefits or payroll. So that's something that I want them to look at, because it's not fair that the increases we're giving our professionals is being funded by supplies, part of our, like, training.
I'm losing so many people.
So it's just something,
It's important to remember that the health insurance is the main driver.
yes,
Without that increase of 3.8 million in the health insurance, we wouldn't have even had much of an ask. We would have been at the 4.5.
exactly.
And now we are going to possibly go through some of these cuts because of the health insurance. I mean, it's really that simple. It's on the backs of them. Who is next? Matthew?
No, go ahead.
And then Dean.
No, Dean, go first.
All this discussion boils down to a few different things. One, it sounds like we're trying to figure out amongst ourselves just exactly what does this number mean, and what does that number mean, and what was your takeaway from the meeting, or the minutes, or the recording, or what have you. Then we're talking about what is it that the other folks are looking at, the other officials are looking at. And there's a natural tendency to say, don't blame us, this is being driven by something from the outside. Well, suppose they're not actually blaming us, they're saying, we're not holding you blameworthy for anything. But what we're saying is we don't like the number and this is what we're going to do. Good job, but we're going to take the ball and move forward. The other area, of course, that we discussed is, to what extent are the other officials confused? Okay, that we can address. If they're confused, if they have questions, and answering the questions helps them become allies, wonderful, we can do that one. But as I said, if they're working off of a different philosophy, which is, we're not blaming you. We understand costs have gone up. We get all that stuff. We've seen that elsewhere. But this is what we're going to do, notwithstanding. So telling them don't blame us goes nowhere if they already accept that there's actually no blame. The fairness question is a good thing to bring up, okay? Because I've seen in the past, the town council, the RTM saying, X% across the board. And if they could get away with it, they would do that in the schools as well. But very often the school budget never actually rose to the level of, so there's not much to cut anyway. But it's a big dollar, but yeah, they would proceed from that position. So I think it's a fair point. If we're being cut X and everybody else is being cut or not cut at all by much smaller percentages, yeah, why us, because that's where the dollars happen to be. I'm just trying to keep the thing focused on what is it that we're trying to accomplish, which is to convince people to vote a certain way, to support a certain budget, and what is it that we need to tell them to convince them. I'm thinking the blame thing, I'm casting it that way as, don't look at us, it's health insurance. They may have already gone past that in their thoughts, There may be people who are thinking, there may be officials thinking, the Board of Ed, they're not doing their jobs, they're allowing fat in there, we'll cut it out for them. But I don't know that that's necessarily the main driver of the decision. So, I don't know where they go with this one, other than work on making sure that they're informed. Also, you have to know what the other officials are waiting for. They're waiting for the Board of Ed and the administration to come in and say, we're going to have to cut third grade strings, we're going to have to cut lacrosse, we're going to have to cut. That's what they're waiting for. Everybody knows this from coast to coast. This is what Board of Eds do. Put the kids up there as human shields and they say, don't cut. So they're prepared for that one. What kind of a narrative do we have that's actually credible that could withstand that skepticism?
Yep. So, sorry. Go
I
on.
think Matthew,
I'd like to. You may or may not be right about portraying it as holding the kids up as human shields, but I think that's what our job is. We have two constituencies, in my opinion, or three. We have the constituency of the RTM and council. We have the constituency of the taxpayers, but we, unlike every other body, have another constituency that doesn't vote, and that's the children. And I really appreciate this sheet that you prepared. I would offer for your consideration to dig down one more level, where it says programs like pre-K and TK, $520,000. That's the theory. Where's the beef? What does that mean? It means, and I'm making up numbers, I have no idea what the truth is. It means so many teachers. It means so many aides. It means fewer classes. It means XYZ. If we talk about certified staff, it means one less basket weaving. It means one less English. It means one less or 0.5 math. To be really very specific, but if this is what you want us to do, this is the consequence. We're not threatening, we're just telling you. And if you have a better idea for where we could cut money, please bring it to us. And that, I may be wrong. It's kind of.
No, I think you do need levels of specificity, but I think one of the things that we haven't done, even with $7 million, is touch programs. We haven't touched athletics, we haven't touched music, we haven't touched the things that bring kids to school. And not that I wanted to touch it, that was the last thing on our list. We did everything else. But, honestly, and the last thing I'd ever want to do, in early intervention, early childhood programs are the best thing we can do.
It's the best.
People around the state are coming to see what our TK program looks like. They're in awe. Other people are fighting and duking it out because they don't have someplace for their kids to go. And we do, but, I never want that to, I'm hoping that, that Mark Romano can tell people that we might not have all the middle school sports and the freshman sports, so get out there and let the RTM know that this is a reduction that goes, this is like, we need, a tourniquet. I mean, this is really bad news.
Our
to
fifth
go
grade
through.
strings will sound like third grade strings, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
There will be no strings.
Well, you can start it in fifth grade, but that's 3
Third grade, third
FTEs.
grade.
I don't know if you heard the feed, but I got a Google feed and news feed today. U.S. News and World Report put out its list of ranking schools
I know,
in
we're on it.
Connecticut. We are number 59, about 180. We are in the top third of public schools in the state. I don't think any other Alliance district has ever come anywhere near performing as well we have. And we've done that through quality teaching and providing the quality stuff. Now, that's a fact. Again, the specificity, it's your choice. You're running the show. I think we need to be very specific.
I'm not doing it alone, you're with me.
Absolutely.
I'm not doing it by myself. We're all in this together.
Yeah, but I can't tell you
Right.
what a reduction of $250,000 and or $400,000 in certified staff. I just think,
Well, it says 6,
it was 6 people. Well, 4.
larger class sizes.
Yeah. What does that mean in losing 6 certified staff? Now, I'm not asking for names, but where is this going to happen? Let people see that we're going to lose a social studies, or we're going to lose an English class, or people have to know the truth, not to be brutal and not to manipulate, but just simply to tell the truth.
But here's the thing, Matthew. People are convinced that the fat lies in central office. And if you want $2 million more for kids, you got to take $2 million out of the central office. So that suspicion is always going to be there at some level. Hell, I've heard for years people saying, I've come to the number of cars in the parking lot. Who are all these people working in central office? How many superintendents do we need and all that
Yeah,
jazz?
you got one.
Because they don't grasp what goes on in this building in addition to administration. And they also don't know how administration is set up and just exactly what the dollar figures are.
Lori worked for an 80-something million dollar company, and what did you say? How many people were in your central office? We have 20, maybe 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are looking to better times. I look forward to having an open house here. I look forward to having more open houses where the public can come in and see, and Lori can say, this is my department, this is what we do. This is what Sam does.
And the town department, which has 100 people, have nearly what we have in our central office of 1,000 people and 5,000 kids.
Say
And then
it.
there's a city, too.
Say it, not to, say it, let them hear
It's
the
a city,
numbers.
we have a city and it's the way this town is run. But it takes as many of them as us to run a tenth of what we're doing.
So Ian and then Adrian.
Just to respond to Dean real quick, alternative narratives to put forward besides, the impacts on the students, which I think I agree with Matthew and Adrian from the other day. It'd be great to even get more specific and more detail with what these impacts would look like. So the RTM understands, show the potential craters that will be, in the ground. But as far as looking at it from a more clinical point of view, I think if we just look at it functionally over the past 5-10 years, we can look back on the fund balance that the town holds. And historically, back when you were on the council, you were saying is around about 7.5%.
Of the budget, yeah.
Right,
It's the advised number.
right. It is now over 22%. There's $38 million in the fund balance. And we also need to draw a correlation between that occurrence and the occurrence of our health reserves that was supposed to be there to handle these buffers. If we had the reserves fully stocked, or stocked to a higher degree, had we not been tapping into them historically over the past many cycles, we would not be in the position we are now. We'd be able to absorb that 3.8 million health insurance costs.
That's right.
And why did we tap into those health reserves? It was suggested by the finance director of the town at the time. So I think that's important to draw out those correlations. By us decreasing and I wasn't on the board, of course, at the time, but I'm just saying collectively, we're all in this together, right? So by the board decreasing the percent of increase that they're asking of the town each budget cycle for the past 5, 6, 7 years, however long it's been going on, where it's been like 0 to 1%. That's allowed the town to build their fund balance
And keep the taxes lower.
and keep the taxes lower.
Yes.
You know, so from a certain point of view, if you draw those two correlations together, the town has been building this fund balance on the backs of the Board of Ed's budget, at the expense of the Board of Ed's budget.
You think so?
And
Now,
The kids.
that's important,
Expense of the education to the children.
right?
To the next
And the
generation.
resiliency of the Board of Ed.
And I would say also excess revenue that's come in, that, beyond what we've predicted.
Right.
And that has also fed the fund.
I know people don't like to call it the rainy day fund, the fund balance. Nowadays, we have to call it the fund balance. People refer to it as a rainy day fund, and as Jen White pointed out, it's pouring.
Yeah, it's just pouring, it's the middle of the storm, and they're trying to lock us out of the house.
Yeah.
That's the narrative. So if we want to draw a full context, you want to, have an alternative narrative to talking about the impacts on the students, there's that. We can use the math and the history.
Can we find out if, I remember John saying that he's got 4 million from the fund balance that is going to the town side to help the taxpayers with his side of the budget. Is there a way that we could find that out in that town budget book? Is that really happening?
It has, for the last allocation, that wouldn't be published yet, right?
I know, but I remember hearing him say it, that he was going to
Unless
use
it's
the
on that
4
RTM
million.
spreadsheet.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that 4 million, and I wasn't quite clear on the reasoning why. Was it to lower the overall thing?
I
or
thought it was for the sake of the taxpayer, so he was going to use it on the town side of the budget as kind of revenue to,
I thought the council
away.
voted on that once the RTM is done, how much is going to be.
Right, that comes
no
at the
rate and
very
how much
end.
is
maybe
funded.
he just brought
So,
that up, that could be done.
Maybe that was a
But
proposal.
that number is
Did you hear him
also,
say it too?
that number is also very close to the number that I know that the town owes Pfizer for a tax settlement.
Oh,
So there's that.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
On that note, Adrian,
And there's lawsuits.
Right.
So, just to go back to talking about central office or administration, I came into these meetings a big skeptic, thinking that there was a lot to save in central office. And last week, when we went over some of the numbers, I've spent lots of time in that state site that has every town in it, and you can look. And I believe we have fewer certified staff as percentage by something like 4% than the average. So we already have fewer certified teachers. But when we go to administration, the state average, I believe, was 5.6% of the staff. And in this district, it's 5.8%. So that's a position or two, but it's not like we're overload. So maybe there's some savings in one or two administrative positions.
and I think we put that in. We have put that
But
in.
there is not, like.
A lot.
We don't have
There's not
$2
$3.8 million.
We don't have any substantial amount of money in savings by eliminating one or two higher salaries. That might get us a couple of tutors, but that is not going to make up for the cuts that we've made and the cuts that the council made on top of that. Going back to TK and pre-K, I would like the town to understand that, that by offering these services, especially given the students and the needs that we have, we are saving money. Because when you educate kids at 4 and 5, and get them ready for school and have them reading by the end of really grade 1, but grade 3, like at level by grade 1, we are gonna need to spend less money later on special ed services. If we don't have them reading and performing
Amen.
well at that young age.
That's right.
So by being forced to cut these early programs, we are shooting ourselves in the foot. We have a credit card with a really high percentage rate on it, and we're charging this to our future. So the short-sightedness of being forced to cut things like that. And when we talk about cuts, I mean, we have to talk about teaching and learning and what affects teaching and learning and what doesn't, because some of the cuts that I feel that we already did overly affect teaching and learning in comparison to other areas.
But we've exhausted all resources. There's nothing, I said, there's no stone that has not been unturned to try to find it. There's not a lot of fat here. I mean, we're back to pre-COVID numbers of staff, so next year or the year after when we're looking at that website, wait and see, because I'll bet you're really,
No,
we're
but
under, yeah.
I imagine that US News is going to say, oh, well, Groton just cut their budget by 12.2%. Even giving all the inflation and things that we have, they cut that much from their budget next year. Who's going to go back to what Andrea was saying before?
Who's gonna come
Who's
here?
going to want to live in this town?
Exactly.
I mean, my family's, like, my house has been in my family for 150 years, and I'm discouraged living here. It's very, I mean, we're gonna turn this town into corporate-owned Airbnbs and summer houses. Who else is gonna wanna live here?
Or the New Yorkers
Like,
that live
when
next to
we
me.
talk about how much money we spend something about already in 2023, the numbers that are like in this book, we're spending about $3,000 less per child on education in Groton versus Stonington, Montville, Waterford, East Lyme,
Agreed.
and New London. I think New London spends $21,000 per student or something, but New London, all of those are above the state average. All of those towns are above the state average by 1,000 or 2,000 per child, and we're below the state average by 1,500 or 1,700 per child.
I wish Mike Whitney were sitting here with us.
I bet he's going to watch this.
Huh?
I bet he's going to
I'm
watch
gonna-
this.
I hope he will, because I think that,
Just
you
so
know,
happens we have a vacancy. Too soon?
Sue, Jay.
Yes, I do see your hand. I did point to Jen real quick, and then it'll be you,
Okay.
Dr. Ackerman. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm trying to.
So I,
just bring your
get it.
microphone up.
yeah, I definitely agree with what Adrian, is saying, right? So when I was talking, when we were presenting to the board, it's like an investment. It's an investment to our students, investment to our town. And so don't be penny wise, pound foolish that we're saving, because if this continues, as Dr. Ackerman had mentioned, the school district is what brings people into town, and if we can't get people who want to move in here, everyone's house values will be lower, and no business will want to, I'm not trying to say doomsday, but it's a very slippery slope to go downhill in your town, and it's hard to change that perception going forward. But with that said, I would like to go through these potential cuts, because I would like to change some of them, because I don't think we should put some of these on.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be other
So-
ideas. And I just want to say that Mark Romano is ready to send a letter out about athletics for parents to come to the RTM. He has $1 million budget, so we're not getting rid of all of athletics, but there might be some things we do. But it's going to affect our kids because, that really keeps them healthy and out of trouble and part of the school community. It's part of the school spirit. I mean, I don't want any of these gone. I just want people to show up so they say, this is ridiculous. Like, this is horrible.
Can I, do you mind if sorry, finish.
I just want to recognize Dr. Ackerman real quick, and then we'll go back to, were you?
I'm done.
Okay.
But she does
Well,
want to
you're
share.
not done, but
No.
for the moment.
For the moment.
Dr. Ackerman and then Adrian.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been sitting here thinking about raising this point, and I was wrestling with it because I thought, maybe this is going to sound like I'm not 100% thinking about to children. But it's amazing that right at that moment, and I put my hand up, what I've been thinking about is our property values. We're all taxpayers. This is, if the town council and the RTM are thinking about us as taxpayers, you need to think about what Jen just said, and that is our property taxes, our property values are going to decrease. So you need to think about that.
Thank you. Adrian and then Dean.
I will be quick, and I apologize for
No,
jumping.
no, no.
One thing I had written down that I wanted to go back to, but the town funding versus the Board of Ed, I did these numbers last week in the meeting. The Board of Ed has increased over the 10 years from 2015 to 2024. We've increased 8.5% in that 10 years, a total of 8.5. So less than 1% per year. The town, in that same time, it was 26.7% that they've increased their budget, the town side of the budget. So that's how lopsided this has been for so long. And I know some people have said, we thought we were going to save money when we opened new schools. Well, we did.
We did.
This happened. Like, this happened after we opened the schools, and it's been a steady bleed since then. But, so there just has been, it shows where our values are. It goes back to what we had talked about before. But how we fund education shows where our values are. And if we fund education below everything else, which is clear in the budget that was, in what was done to our budget, that shows where Groton is and what our values are. And we have to own that as a town, however this turns out.
I just want to say, very nice comment in the day. I try to make it a practice not to read the comments, but I couldn't help myself this time.
I've been trying not.
You wrote a very nice comment. Dean?
On two things. One, I've long argued that, except perhaps for public safety, the subject matter, if you will, of the other town departments can be deferred. So for example, if you were to cut public works, actually cut public works, not decrease and increase, but cut public works, or adjust the library budget, or Parks and Rec. Yeah, there are personnel in there, but there's a lot of stuff, it's a lot of work that more or less could be deferred. Okay, so we won't do this work this year, but next budget cycle, when things look better, which they never do, next budget cycle, we'll catch up, we'll do more curbing or something like that. And again, I partially exempt public safety because you can't be very blithe about that either. If you experiment, sometimes you wish you hadn't. Remember, years ago, we took the substation out of Pequannock Bridge, the Midway Oval area, and I think we paid for that. But education definitely is an area where, because the subject matter happens to be children, you cannot defer. You cannot say, well, this year we won't do, and we'll make it up in another year. The children have all moved chronologically 1 year up. We joke about, hey, if you don't want fifth grade strings to sound like third grade strings, but effectively that's what it would be across the board. So that's one distinction of the of education. Now, on the petty side of this, property values. It isn't necessarily clear sailing. Your argument necessarily doesn't have clear sailing because, and I'm not saying we're at that point, because you can get to a point, tax-wise, where, yes, the schools don't look unattractive, or they look attractive, but, the taxes in that town, and the major contributor would be, expenditure on students. Some people will look at test scores. Some people will look at per pupil expenditures. Other people will look at the budget increases, or they'll just look at the taxes when considering whether or not to buy a place in town. There is a phenomenon, this is other than, apart from people just thinking, well, I like or I don't like, there is a phenomenon where people looking to buy a house, and mostly looking to finance the purchase of the house, are told by their lender, yeah, when we add all the numbers up, the proposed P&I plus the taxes plus the insurance, too high. We don't like the ratios, and therefore, we're not going to loan money So what happens overall? What happens is the property values go down because people can't get the loans they need at that level. So, yes, our arguments go forward, but then we meet this countervailing wind of, at some point, you butt up against the reality of being more expensive than everybody else around. I can go to a good school in another town and pay less in taxes, noticeably less. Some people must make that calculation. I suspect it's the other way around. I suspect people with kids are willing to pay a premium, even if they have to dig into their own pantry to do that. But these are factors that we have to take into consideration. I'm not saying that we're there yet, but I suspect that other town officials are thinking, yes, with all due respect to your arguments regarding the kids and the lack of deferral and all that, but you got to watch it. We don't want to be radioactive tax-wise.
Yeah. I believe, we need to do a better job advertising too for our schools, right? Because we have an IB program, so we need to sort of tout that, because I think East Hartford's the only other school district in the state. I don't know
It
if
can be
there's.
like Old Lyme. I've got 4,
Yeah.
and they pay for actually the IB.
You know what I mean? So
$60,000
it's
for the
like,
IB.
yes, we're an alliance district, but we also have a coveted type of degree that can go beyond. So when you're looking at our district and you're just seeing ooh, bad scores, it's sort of well, no, not. And then especially we made the investment in the middle school so that carries forward. There's the career paths for students who don't want. So we just need to do a better job advertising. But advertising's not going to get you anywhere. We need to get the school scores up, right? So we need to work on that. And once we get, this is, not going out of budget, but
But
it's
that's
just
going to
almost
require all these
strategic.
things we've given up.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that, doing that work, that's a lot of professional learning. That's support staff, that's our teachers.
Right.
That's the right curriculum materials. I mean, all of those things go into lifting that.
But something Susan just said, people complain about the IB fees that are in our budget. Maybe we should just get rid of the IB program, because we pay all these fees. The 4 students from out of town who are attending and paying tuition to be in our IB program actually pay for those fees, those 4 students. And by the way, where does the tuition go?
Where it always goes, where everything goes,
Seriously?
to the town.
It
Really?
goes- The tuition goes to
Now,
the
the
town.
town could say, well, we've paid for those fees then through these students.
It's just like when someone rents Fitch Auditorium. The fees go to the town.
I know
We're not
people seem
allowed to.
surprised about
We're
that.
not allowed to collect these fees. There's only certain fees we're allowed to collect.
That sounds like we might need another MOU.
I don't think the town council appreciates the economic development impact of these cuts. I think if they really appreciated it, they'd have moderated them.
I don't want to characterize.
No, I didn't mean that as with any disrespect at all. I just,
Okay. I just want to be careful about.
Okay. Well,
Well, I do think we're going to the RTM. John Burt has said to both of us that he thinks that they can restore it and might, and will restore it, he said. But restoring it, I need to make sure restoration means that I've got everything that, we don't have what we've already given up, and that's a lot, I agree. But we need what we have to keep, and then the nurses.
Right.
But if I'm hearing Jen correctly, she wants us to sort of consider some red lines, maybe, of where
Yes.
we're not willing to go.
Correct, and then maybe alternatives.
So should we switch?
Yeah.
these?
Yeah, let's look at
Yeah,
this.
let's go through.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause we're gonna, this is
Yeah, so-
tomorrow that I
so
have
this
to
is why
do this
I
RTM
appreciate
thing.
the fact that we talked about
Yeah.
this that we've already done. I think
It's a good
it brought up important conversations.
foundation, and we need to share that.
And we have talked a little bit about this, but I want to hear what you guys have to say, and if you have other ideas.
Oh, that's interesting, okay. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to ask really quick, the notes in the lower right corner,
Yep.
they're clear up on the screen.
Oh.
The Excel cells
I
spread
know, it was
outwards.
my copy, quick copy.
But here, I can't read what they
Yeah.
say on the sheet here.
That's legal, and this is,
I know. So it was like, town covers health care reserve since requested, been requesting board to use to reduce over the past 10 years or 12 years. It's been
Who has
asked-
this up on their screen, or, Phil, is that you?
No, it's Clint,
Oh. Could you just read
you
out
read it?
those notes at the bottom, in the bottom right?
because they're cut off on our pages.
Down here?
Yeah, you need to bring it above Dr. Ackerman.
Or maybe
said.
just do a super zoom in on that section?
Yeah,
So we can, I just want to jot those down so I understand what they say.
I'm sorry, I was doing this quickly at the end of the day.
Excel is always tricky to print.
I know it is.
Oh,
And I
these
never
are-
have the right size
Just
paper.
just move it over just a little bit.
Yeah, move it over so we can see it, to the left. There you go.
Oh, there it is.
All right.
It's just the last line that we don't have on our printout.
3K for event workers.
That was a Mark Romano conversation. He gave me all the
Reduced
details.
Budget for 10 years. All right. Am I seeing one line twice?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
You're not seeing double.
So you can email us this full
I will, I
file.
got
so
it.
we
I
don't
just,
have to
yeah.
Write it down.
Yep, yep.
So that
I just want to be able to refer to it.
everyone online has the actual file. We just don't
Yeah.
have quite, so we're missing some of it because of the
A couple
printout,
words
so.
of it, yeah. I'm good to go now.
All right, so,
Thank you.
all right. Just since I'm talking, I would like to start talking about this by saying that I think we should still keep in mind teaching and learning and, athletics, or when we think of athletics, they draw kids, they assist in teaching and learning because my assumption is that there's a lot of children that may not be as excited to come to school if they didn't have what we offer after school. And maybe there's savings to have in some of those things, but I would like to, that's our banner everywhere, teaching and learning. So when we talk about cuts and where we're gonna find more money, or if we're forced to, keep that in mind.
I agree and echo the sentiments.
And Jen, since you sort of started this idea of where we won't go or shouldn't go, did you have anything specific?
Oh, yeah.
And you had some ideas too.
I had ideas too. It's good to see that they were sort of duplicative. So where it says admin, safety and security, you see that, the 150?
So there's a 150 at the top.
A 150 at the top, right? I had replaced clerk for security, so on page 5-91. If we look at security, we have actuals of 5.5, if everyone's there, with a proposed reduction, security going to 4, which is a 1.5. I know I'm heading in the wrong direction right now, but with less people in the building, I would not recommend reducing security. The impact of reduction of security is only 14,000, based on this little change over here. So I would like to put security back and possibly replace with like half an admin, just so that like we can ensure that our kids have that protection. So that was one when I
Jen,
saw.
if I can interrupt, just to be clear,
That is an
that's the
administrator,
impact
of what an administrator.
of what an
leaving.
administrator reduction would be.
So they are
So we're not
really-
talking about like
Yeah.
security officers.
They are,
Okay.
an
That's the
administrator,
impact. Like if we're down administration, they can't cover a full building, it's adding the load,
Okay.
the student load to the administrators that are left.
And also the teachers. I mean, they really cover security. They are, and teaching and learning. They're in
Right, like,
charge
any
of,
reduction in
and
staff will
supervision
probably-
of staff.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep talking over you.
Well,
I apologize.
And I just want to make it clear to anybody who's watching or will watch this later, that this is not a document that we are sort of voting on tonight
No,
or
no,
anything like
it's
that.
just
These are not,
discussion.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is just, what does $1 million cut
Look
look
like.
like?
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
We're not
'cause-
recommending, but I do think it's important that we have some red lines,
Yeah.
personally,
Yep.
that we're not willing to go.
And just to go back to security, when you talk about security, how many security did we already cut?
Yeah.
I think like
2.5.
Yeah.
We've already cut before we even got to this new document.
Yes.
There's 2.5 less, fewer security
Agreed.
personnel.
And that is a concern. That's a
Yes.
concern of the principals, that's a concern of ours.
that's, yeah.
They
'cause
they
there are
avoid they help to avoid a lot of conflicts.
Yes. So that's something that is almost like, when it comes to safety, like education, like I want our kids to feel like when they're there, they can just relax. Because sometimes that may be the only place that they have that peace and quiet. So that's like an item that like I would like us sort of to consider if we were going to move forward with this, right? Like, for security. So what was funny was, not funny, I'm glad to see athletics freshman team because when I was in school, they never had a freshman team. It was always just JV varsity, right? And the freshmen were in that JV team. That's the feeder thing.
So I think that's $22,000 worth of stipends, and Mark feels that can be absorbed in JV.
Exactly, and less bus
And
rides,
middle
too.
school sports, I mean, one of the things we all talked about, I mean, that's important too, but they also have a, what is it, the intramurals. And Parks and Rec does a lot for middle school kids. And maybe Parks and Rec need to pick up the slack, and they can come to the middle school and run programs right out of the middle school after school, right?
Yeah. And then the last thing, when I saw this, Susan, I wanted to remove that 520,000 for pre-K, TK. That is an absolute must investment in our students. So.
I couldn't agree more.
So I know, like I said, let's not bury our heads in the sand. So that is something.
I just
that
wanted
is
you
like
to have an idea of what that would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was the idea, is like, do people know what $1 million looks like?
Yeah.
And we certainly are not advocating
No,
any
no,
of these things should be cut, but these are the
No.
painful decisions
but
that are going to
I,
have to be made.
I came up with some.
Money isn't restored.
Right.
But I came up with some that are non-teacher impact related, right? Like our budget tool, right? We can take part of that out. I'm glad you guys have summer school already. Communications person, bus consolidation, I saw that. There was an athletic trainer. I don't know if Mark mentioned that, Romano, like, that was like $70,000. You guys are gonna persecute me again, but, the culinary program, $150,000. If somebody wants to go into culinary, I mean, Grasso Tech, that is not our core competency. Our core is math, English, science, and unfortunately, social studies
And career pathways.
and career pathways.
And that's a prominent career pathway.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's sort of like, once again, if we're gonna be, if we're gonna be like tagged with something, that's just an option out there.
So I'll just really quick on culinary.
Yeah.
I'll keep it quick.
Yeah.
So if we were to cut culinary, number one, we've already had capital investment into that, right? Didn't we just spend some money in culinary?
We have been spending Perkins Grant.
But all of those kids are going to have to go into other classes.
Right.
Like, it's not like that money just evaporates.
Right.
We all of a sudden have to absorb however many class hours into other parts.
And the schedule's full.
I've seen the schedule. I used to think that there was lots of classes with 10 kids.
Not anymore.
The schedule, I'm impressed with our schedulers, that when I looked at that, it made me really appreciate how many classes we offer, pages of them line by line.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of classes with a ton of space left.
And we don't
I mean, there are
run
a
them
few
if there's
here
not
and
enough
there, and I think
kids.
that's
Yeah.
unavoidable
Yeah.
in scheduling. But if we cut a program like that, we have to look at the real savings. Just because it says $150,000, we're going to have to pick it up somewhere else.
Yep.
So, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just
go on.
wanted to say that.
No,
that's a
I've been
discussion, I
like,
think,
I've been,
too. Yeah.
I've just been going, because going back to like, like during the budget cycle, right? Grasso Tech does it well. I'm not saying that we don't do it well, but it's just, I'll move on. So these were just like ideas. There's like professional services that was on 589. We can go through that. But there's behavioral analysts. They came and presented to us at our board meeting. And they said they measured metrics, but when we were pressing them for metrics, they didn't really share any. And I know that there's some other staff within our district that does metrics as well. So there's potentially duplicative work there, and I don't know, maybe I just don't know enough.
Can I just tell you that the children that we have in the ABA program and in the behavioral program, we've brought back. We used to spend a fortune sending our kids out. And the good work that our SPED department has done, keeping our kids in-house, and we need them in order to do this work. Otherwise, they'll be going back, and we'll be paying 10 times more.
We'll be back to paying the other institution and the transportation and the person, the para, that will have to go with them.
Go with them.
To the other institution, or,
And then they won't even be in their home school.
and they won't be in the least restrictive environment, which
And-
Dr. Ackerman can explain better than I can.
Yeah.
And also BCBA's, just talking from my own conversations at home, because my wife teaches first grade,
Yep.
they are instrumental in making classes more efficient. Because when you have 20 children and one of them
It's disruptive.
is excessively disruptive, the value that we get out of, I did a calculation a while back on how much a classroom costs, but it's something like $400,000 that we're spending on a first grade classroom of 20 kids or something, right? The money that costs when that class isn't effective, and now we need to make up for all that loss of learning, either down the line or through other things. So BCBA's, they're newer, I think, but I think we found that it makes the classes run better. And there's a lot of classes, speaking from, what I've heard at home, it seems like more years than not, there's one or two children that are very disruptive, and without being able to handle that, it is much less effective teaching.
Okay,
So-
that's fair. I just saw them when they presented, right? We asked
Yeah.
them, like, all of those questions, what are you tracking? Show us your metrics, blah, 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 and,
And maybe we
So-
should have some conversations with teachers that, that might be a question for teachers.
Yeah.
Because I think they are the ones that are going to tell us
Of their-
what's working in education and what they really need to be successful, because I think all of them want to be successful.
yep. And then, there was something regarding telephones, there was like 50,000 in there, like on page 599, that was small change. Custodial, I had to, but it looks like, you offered it up even higher than I had. And this is the controversial one again. The 2 elementary assistant principals. I mean, if we're looking at administrative rather than teachers, and not going to get rid of pre-K, K program, it's just ideas.
Well, you should ask the teachers how they feel about not having the support when something goes south in the building. That's the only thing I would suggest about that. I know it sounds like low-hanging fruit, but I'd be very interested to see what the teachers think about that.
Especially in those bigger schools
Yeah,
where
These are not
we
your
have
neighborhood
over
schools.
500 students and ABA programs and needs, high needs.
We have over 160 IEPs in our building. We have over 160 IEPs in our building, and one of our APs handles just that. So if you take 160 students with IEPs, some have behavioral issues, they all have these documents, they all have to have 1 to 2 meetings, official meetings a year, plus all these other interim meetings. Those APs in those 2 larger elementary schools are vital. Both of those buildings house very unique programs. One is our ABA program, one is our academy program, a behavioral program, and that support is crucial. And if we go down to 2, I don't know how the buildings would run.
They also
I
include
don't
all
know
our
how they would
early
get
child.
evaluations done.
It's, these
parents
are
and
just
everything.
all ideas.
No, I'm just giving you an opinion.
Yep.
I, yes, everybody needs input, but I just wanted to give that piece of reality for these 2 big buildings, that we have over 520 students in these buildings.
Yep.
And in my building, 160 of those children have an IEP, which means that's a lot more intensive
Yes.
support that is needed on multiple levels, not just the teacher level and the resource levels. It's also that support from the administration.
Yes,
In
and
that
like I said, it's
position, but-
controversial,
Yeah.
but if it means that we can't have the pre-K, TK, what decision factor are you going to make? So, we're not going to send 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 4.5-year-olds to school. So I'm not just saying, it's just ideas so that we can have those discussions, and nobody wants to do any of this,
No.
right?
Well, that's the point. We don't want to do any of this,
Exactly.
so, but there are reasons why, because we did start with a lower number, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I think this dialogue is beneficial in the sense that it's really, I think, articulating for the community that we're looking at kind of a Sophie's Choice situation where there is no,
Good.
like, if the RTM does not restore us to the requested amount, another movie reference, this would be the day after. Not the day after tomorrow, I'm talking the 1983 nuclear holocaust day after movie, where, like, this is the fallout. And that's why I think some more detail for each of these line items to show, like, that this program's gone, this program's gone. You will not be getting these reports, you will not be getting this program, you will not have summer school or, GED programs, you're not gonna have, you're gonna have larger classes, you're gonna have more behavioral issues, you're gonna have more disruptions. Like, this cannot happen.
That's how I feel.
Exactly.
It
Right.
cannot happen.
And it doesn't add up to the cut. This is,
But I couldn't get there.
right, this
Right.
is just,
We labored
all
over it.
these
There's
bad
no
things
way.
don't even add up to
No, they
what-
don't add up to what they want.
So I mean, like, showing like that impossible dilemma, right? Like, I mean, are we gonna sacrifice the pre-K, TK that is like, basically like required by the state at this point? We're changing the ages, so we need
Yeah.
some sort of buffer program. So are we gonna be in violation of state law? Or are we gonna, cut assistant principals that provide vital programming for IEP students?
Because
We
there's nowhere
just-
left to go.
There's
Right,
no-
we cannot get on the floor any further. We're already down on the ground. We're in the basement now, and falling further. So, I mean,
See why this brought me to tears. It just really is just so frustrating.
right, and I just wanted to follow up quickly. I mean, Adrian shared something earlier, about coming in thinking that maybe there were some savings to be had in certain areas, the administration area, and I was in the same school of thought, and now having been through the process, squeezed the numbers, like, I'm in the same boat, where it's, we've cut and squeezed and done everything we possibly can with these numbers. The health insurance is a situation that we cannot deal with now. So, but I think that's also one area, looking forward into the next budget cycle, I think we have a strong opportunity. And that's probably the biggest saver we could look at moving forward. And that sort of ties into one idea I wanted to kind of float out there. as far as, one, the nurses thing. Like, so I was excited to hear that there was some potential there, that there's already discussions that occurred. It would just, if we could like get that firmed up in some way, that would the town cover it after the fact and allow us more flexibility within. Also, using the fund balance to help cover the cost of the health insurance. Again, a one-time expenditure, get us through this bridge year where we make the commitment to changing our health insurance program so that we are not here ever again. Because honestly, I don't understand the self-funded program. I understand how it works. I don't understand why it was ever considered advantageous.
It was 20 years ago, is that what they were
Yeah,
saying?
It was in the
How many
90s, and
years?
it was to save 5%.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Well.
how it was
They're
floated.
they're historically cheaper than purchasing a premium-based plan. That's why organizations moved to them years ago. But
And it-
whether that's still effective today, 20 years later, the climate's completely different.
Well, and it did work
And it did
well.
work well.
It worked well for many, many years, and then lasering came in. And now, when you have bad claims experience,
Yes.
I have a question,
It's
Jen. I
risky business.
So the field has changed.
have a question for Lori.
yeah, I think,
Good.
Yep. In whatever
do you have
order.
something, and then Dean?
I did a while back, but I'll just speak to the health insurance. I really do hope that we look at that even sooner because, as I've said, I was speaking with an employee about the health plan, and, I have teacher insurance, and I don't have an annual deductible. We pay less every 2 weeks than the school employee, and we both have families, so, and that's on the state plan. So if there's no deductible on a state plan, maybe no one will be upset about switching.
We are hearing better things about it, and I know Lori's already started doing some research, and I think it may be more advantageous for the board side, but not as well for the town side, so that could be a little bit of their resistance, that they wouldn't get as much out of it as we would, but we're the bigger party.
Yeah, and
We
I
got the 1,000
think that we're
people
the
coming
Board
to
of
the
Ed.
table.
We need to, if it doesn't work where they need a different plan,
They have to do a
I
different
mean,
plan.
we're looking at, we talked about the numbers. We're cut 12%, or at best 9.3%.
Are we legally bound to be in the same health program as the town, or could we go separately?
No, I think it can be done.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so that's a third option.
Right.
We can talk about that more later, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think
But
we
it
need
will-
more clarification because it was 20 years ago when it was set up. I believe it was put in place by the town council. I don't know who has any memory of that.
I have no memory.
Okay.
But I think it's
So-
come to, I think it did what it did, and we got what we got, and now we need to say, we're not in a good place, and we need to find a better way.
Right. So just to follow up on that, though, if the town's resistance to the idea of changing over is because it's not so good for them, again, that's another instance of where the town is benefiting from a burden that's been placed on the Board of Ed. So that's problematic.
Which maybe it's okay, but it needs to be acknowledged that we are.
And compensated for. Right.
Just like tuitions
Right.
and the special ed reimbursement, which I don't understand.
That is
why
legally-
excess fund, because that's something that we can't really predict.
By law,
And
that
spend the
excess
money.
fund needs to come, required by the town treasurer to come to the board, those funds,
Yeah.
each
I-
and
I
every
don't-
year, and they have not.
I don't think there's anything this year or last year, though. But now, Dean,
The question I have, Lori, is once upon a time, and I'm probably dating myself, there was something known as, under the Affordable Care Act, as the Cadillac tax. Is that still in effect?
No.
Okay.
No, it's been repealed.
Because, yeah, I thought so, but I remember there was a time when, even though we were self-funded,
right?
there would be an attempt to basically calculate what our premium would have been.
Right.
And we looked at the numbers, we would be well within the Cadillac tax territory.
go.
And the town would have to pay
have
boku
your
bucks.
meeting.
But
Yeah.
I didn't remember whether we escaped that because the tax wasn't there anymore, or whether it was just decided since we're self-funded and we don't actually pay premiums, that.
Thank you, Phil.
Therefore, but you're saying the whole thing has been
Yeah,
scotched.
they repealed it several years ago.
Yeah, that was a major funder of that act, but.
And, I would like to remind everybody that many years ago, we renegotiated with all the unions to go to a high deductible health care to save money. And that was our attempt to make this work. And as I said, it did work for a while. But we went from a fully, what's the terminology?
Fully insured.
No, it would have been a PPO plan. so,
PPO
You know,
plan.
pay for service, so you pay a copay, no large deductible.
Right.
Well, that means our numbers would be even worse.
Right,
I think
and,
that was a
but
prediction.
what I'm saying is, at the time, I believe it was a bit of a sacrifice on the part of the teachers and administrators and staff to go to this plan to keep everything afloat. But now we're reaching another threshold where
Yeah,
we need to find another solution.
because the lasering basically negates the fact, because of course the insurance company's gonna, I don't know if it's 2 instances or 5 or whatever it is, of course they're gonna pick the one, like if somebody
The
is
highest.
diagnosed with a serious illness and they know that it's gonna be $1 million, they're not gonna.
Yeah, they're going to laser claims that they anticipate are going to
Oh,
happen.
yeah, they have all of
However-
that data.
Yeah.
They can
Yes.
easily be like, oh, yeah, that's gonna be like 500,000 right there.
However, there are reinsurance plans that don't laser. So
So,
that's another thing that
Yeah,
needs to be kept
that-
in mind.
I'll just mention, I'd like to get some clarification on that. We did inquire about that, and we were
Okay.
told that the entire stop-loss market moved to lasering.
Oh,
And we couldn't get a policy that wouldn't laser, but I
Who
could.
told us that?
The healthcare consultant. So I'd like to get
Okay.
some clarity on
okay,
that.
yeah, if you could.
Yeah, I will.
Maybe I am going on outdated
Yeah,
information.
and I may
Maybe it
have
has all switched
misunderstood as
over,
well,
but,
so.
yeah.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
You have something?
Well, no, I mean, I guess that the immediate solution would, still, either way, we have to get through this year.
Right.
You know, even if we commit to changing the health insurance situation to something that is far more sustainable and, eliminates us being at risk from lasering, which I think, the state insurance plan, if we partnered with the other municipalities and, that new program, would lasering still be a threat then? Or is it a whole
No, 'cause
different
we
setup?
wouldn't be- we
No,
wouldn't
if
be
you're in the
self-funding.
state plan, they absorb all the risks. Now, we're
Right.
paying almost like a fully insured plan where you're paying basically a premium per employee, per family. And they would just bill us a premium amount that we would then owe, just like a premium plan.
Right.
So they absorb all the risks.
And
So you
it's a
get the
much
power of the
larger
numbers.
pool,
Right.
so that when you start to have claims like we're having, we're a small group
We feel it.
versus a pool,
Right.
it would be spread, the risk would be spread out. so.
Right. And that pool's getting bigger,
Yeah.
so we would have to find some way to bridge from this year to that potential future of being in a plan that doesn't get us in this trap. So that's another, my question would be like, is that something else that we could propose as a possible solution to this, as a one-time, draw on the fund balance,
Till we can get to this.
basically like draw out the credit that's been put in there, over the past 10 years, and,
Well, even this year, I know Davis shared that chart of the 1.4939 million dollar overage from just this year in revenue. And he took the minuses and the pluses. So where we were under, we covered ourselves, and where we were over. So the true value of the revenue that has come into the town is over by 1.439 million. And he said, he's shared with us that the sub line is up, with healthcare cost and with, all of these illnesses and surgeries, and we're seeing that high claim. Teachers have had to take care of themselves, and so we have to get subs in the room. Not only teachers, administrators, paras, people have been out. And so, you see that kind of aligned, so that's.
There's a direct correlation.
There's a direct correlation. So the sub line is way up, and then we also have the property costs. Now, we did get a couple of those covered, a couple of the floods, the Fitch flood and the Mystic River flood, so, we did have to pay the $25,000 for each of the insurance deductibles, but we did get a couple, got funds back, so he's got a chart on that too. So we've got the property claims, we've got the subs, and then we've got going down towards the corridor, we want to steady up that health insurance. So whatever else is left over, we feel like that 1.439 will serve us well, getting us through the end of this year. With those things that we had no crystal ball and knew that the flood was coming. I felt like Noah's Ark there for a while, because every month we were having a flood. And then, these buildings, they're not concrete like these old ones, and that drywall, as soon as it gets wet, what can come after that? So you have to go major construction right away. So, I think that's a fair plan. I think that's doable, and I think we're going to end up having to go to the board, to the town council to talk about these things. But I think that can help steady us a little bit, too.
And then Matthew?
So we sit under the tree and assume the lotus position, and we will achieve nirvana with respect to health insurance by going to the state plan. We think possibly.
Possibly.
Okay.
We'll do better
explore all
than we
the
are.
options.
Yeah.
Suppose we do that because it has everything we want, and now we're in the state plan. And you may not have an answer to this. We're in the state plan, and the state giveth, and the state can also taketh away. Suppose the state then makes the state plan something that is not desirable. Now, we have higher this, lower that. It's a completely unsatisfactory plan because the state can't print money. What if we say, you know what, the state plan worked for a while, but now it's 10 years down the road or whatever, and boy, we got to bail and do something different. And that alternative, whether it was say it's self-funding, that between paying for insurance straight up or self-funding, and we think self-funding may be the way to go. How would we transition? Because self-funding presumes we have a pile of money that we're sitting on. If we go to the state plan, there is no pile of money. We have somehow transitioned out of that. But now we decide state plan just isn't what we thought it was going to be after it all works out after a number of years. Boy, we ought to do something else. Is it possible that we could be in a position where we're going to have to, at one time, in a hugely self-fund, this is a hypothetical, of course, but it's possible that we'd be dissatisfied with the state plan and maybe revert back to what we have because it's the best of the three options at that point. Well, what would that involve?
Well,
I don't even know how we got into this to begin with.
yeah, so that will involve, whatever change we make to leave a self-funded arrangement requires some capital to move. Because you have to account for your run-out claims under your self-funded plan, because all the claims process months after the fact. So you have to keep a reserve that you can, or a corridor, whatever we want to call it, to cover your run-out claims, and you still have to pay your premium on the new plan. So you have it going out, and then you might have that with every plan change. So it is something that has
Yeah.
to be planned.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why we have to plan almost a year ahead, because there is an investment to make a move.
Well, what would it take to get out of the state plan if we thought, like I said, it's not working out?
It's a 3-year commitment going in, and then
Okay.
you can move anytime after that. You can move it within the 3 years, but there is a penalty. But after 3 years, you can leave without a penalty.
Yeah, I like backdoors in contracts if possible. I just was sort of curious. I think 3 years is going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if we're in it long enough, like, we could be here 20 years from now saying, geez, we started this 20 years ago, and
Well-
it isn't what it used to be. How do we get out of it?
Right.
Matthew?
I'd like to go back to this sheet, because as important as the health insurance is, people who are tuning in to hear about what we're going to do with our budget. There are two sets of questions I have. I see that we've grouped this in 3 different baskets. I'm trying to imagine what the labels are and why you divided them this way.
I said, how much is $1 million? And we tried to brainstorm, how much is $1 million? The first go-round, the next go-round, and then we couldn't get there in the second go-round. And we really didn't get there the first go-round. We're off by
So-
20 grand.
What I'm drawing from this, though nobody said it in as many words, is that this is going to be massaged so that we have a document to work from when we meet with the RTM. That's my understanding. Bear with me just a second, and then comment. So, either we put in slow progress, older equipment, functionality, school supplies. What is $250,000 in school supplies? I think when we finally figure out what items we're going to excise from this list, because it's just something we can't bring ourselves to do, what we might add to the list, either we give a expanded description of each line, or we can expect to have long discussions when people ask us, well, line by line, what do you mean by this, what do you mean by that? And after a very short time, everybody's eyes are going to glaze over. So I would say that the notes need to, our intended audience is that their eyes don't glaze over this stuff.
Right.
And they're not going to be making the decisions, the board will be making the decisions, but our principals actually put that on the list. They've lived off of 70% of their site budget funds this year, and they've done a darn good job.
I wasn't picking on this,
Yeah.
I was just using.
But I'm just saying, for instance, that was one of the things that they came up with, and that means less paper, and it means less pencils and crayons and this and that and the other thing, and maybe being really careful with transportation and number of field trips and all those things that they put in their site budget, professional
I'm just going to
development.
jump onto secretaries, and I'm going to make some assumptions that may be incorrect. I'm just doing it as a for instance. When we say attendance, we're not going to have as much way to track attendance, so we're going to have less of I don't know if this is true, we may have less understanding of who's chronically absent, and we won't be able to reach out to these kids, so that we're going to have more absences, family engagement. What does that mean in terms of where the rubber meets the road? Data, what data might we lose, and how is that going to impact the students? And bring each one of these things down to the impact on the students. If we can do that, I think it will clear for them. Not only will they not have to ask as many questions, but the questions they do ask will be focused on children, which is where I hope that their questions go.
And
I think people
that's
don't-
what Ian was getting at
Yeah,
at the beginning, was
absolutely.
flesh this out. This is a, this is a
It's a great first
skeleton.
start. It's a great.
and
Yeah,
now we
it
need
was just
flesh
meant to
out
be
the
that.
things
Okay.
So
But
that
I'll-
people can relate to the cuts.
So I understand now
But
how
we're
you came
losing.
to this a million at a time. Now, maybe there is a way to group them by subtopics.
I don't think people normally think of the secretaries as having such a critical, job. I mean, just such a important job. They're the first one that families meet. They welcome them into the building. They are responsible in helping the principal keep track of attendance and get all the letters out and call people up. So their job is really essential to help teachers when they call and to, serve the whole school community, the families at home and the teachers inside and the principals. But I don't think people actually realize how important they are. So I was just putting that down just to kind of share why that would be.
X number of one secretary or a .75 secretary
That's
at each
two,
of 5
yep.
schools, each of 3 schools, whatever the truth happened to be. And a secretary is a lot more than answering phones and typing. A secretary also does X, Y, Z,
right.
and this is where it will impact the kids.
But they still have to answer all those
I
incessantly
understand.
ringing phones
Yes, they
and
do
those
do that, too.
doorbells.
But that goes to the chair, the chairman of the
also-
And
board
safety
should
and
be doing that.
security, they're the first ones who have to
Yeah,
let someone in
That's
or
the first
not.
line of security with all these bells.
I guess my point was that they all matter, but I think you're right. I think if we put more detail, they'll even matter more.
Or, just throwing it out there, one person, you talk about it, but don't share the data, because then if it gives them something to look at, it's gonna give them something to check mark to say, oh, we don't need to bring them back to 7.9.
Yeah, that's true.
You can do it.
We got to look at it both ways as a double-edged
So you need to be able to
sword.
just say like, hey, if you do not reinstate us, we're going to have an impact of losing X, Y, and Z, and this is the impact on the kids, and you just talk about it. Say, we have a plan in place, we met, we know we can possibly get there, it's going to be painful, and this is all of the impacts. If you line item this, somebody doesn't like athletics because they were never athletic when they were young, 115, I'm not going to give it back to you. It's just an idea and a thought.
Yeah, some people see it as a road map to cuts.
I think what I was thinking is there were 3 articles that came out. There was the one in the day that, they quoted me in, and that I was kind of telling the story, one in Montville, and ours were kind of similar because we had made no decisions, but I said, here's the potentials. We've already done so much, but here's some potentials of what could happen. But in Norwich, they laid it out position by position. And what did the article say? Angry mob storms, whatever committee that was, because they knew what was at stake and they didn't want it to happen. And I don't know that I want an angry mob
No.
storming anybody, but I think
No.
that people need to know what's at risk. And you're right, it's a double-edged sword because they say, oh, well, that's easy, just take that. I don't care about that, this or that. And we all care about everything that's on this list. We all know that there should be nothing on this list.
Exactly. So it's your call, right? You guys are the ones speaking, but tomorrow, well, it would just be like, hey, we have a roadmap if you can't, but, and this is the impact that it will be. It will be an additional, whatever, 10 more FTEs, and this is the impact of it. And then it's just something more like discussional, we know what we're gonna do. And sometimes this is, we're playing a game.
It's
Or not a
hypothetical
game.
anymore. It's not a hypothetical
Yeah,
anymore.
and
Right.
we're just gonna hold this close to us and we just talk to it, but not like give them, it's just an opinion.
Yeah, I know. I felt that way too.
It's a double-edged sword. Ian indicated, and then Dane,
And Lauren.
and then Lori.
I understand that concern, and I believe that is a valid concern, but I mean, we're looking at a body of about 38 people or so that are on the RTM at this moment, between 35 and 38. I forget how many vacancies there are. But
How many need to vote?
we need a 2/3 vote to override the council. So, that would be roughly about 21, 22, 22 votes. There are those on the RTM I know, I served with them, they're gonna vote for the low figure no matter what, right? There's a lot of people that I think would be swayed or would be reassured in their desire to restore by knowing what they're protecting. I know there's a lot of,
That's good to
reasonable
see it.
people on the RTM, and there's a lot of people that maybe don't understand exactly what this looks like. And, to Jay's point from earlier, like there are already the narratives out there being pushed by other individuals that are saying that, there was obscurity in the budget and, that, there's errors and this and that, the other thing. And, that I think can be counteracted by being very specific. But I definitely would like to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question of the board, just so that when we leave here tonight, we're clear on what the expectations are with this list and what kind of the will of the board is, because I'm not clear at the moment. So are we leaving the list as is? Are we, as the board, are you looking for us to take items off the list, revise the list? So I'm just not clear kind of where we are with that. So I just want to be sure we're meeting your expectations when we leave here tonight.
The list of the
Yeah,
potential
this
cuts?
list, yes.
Okay.
The impact on students portion of it.
Yeah, we're going to expand the impact.
Yeah, we definitely will
Yeah.
get more specific on that.
But do we
Because we
leave
need to
the
get
list
to
as
three-
it is, understanding it's a draft?
Yes,
Did you
yes.
want us to make changes?
When I
just wanna be
mentioned,
clear.
I mentioned red lines, it was just like philosophically among us ourselves.
Okay.
What would we
Yeah.
not? But-
I put X's beside some that you've mentioned.
But I'm not saying actually remove it from this
Okay.
list,
Okay.
because it
So we
should
won't make
alarm
any
people.
changes in the content, we're just going to
Yeah.
add more detail on the impact at this point in time, and it's just for you
Yeah.
to use at this point. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I'm comfortable with the gamble of providing as much specificity as possible. Because I think people need to understand, where the impacts are gonna be, where the crater is gonna be, where the buildings, what's going on. I mean, this is destruction.
And I think they need to see this, to Adrian's
Yes.
point. They
Right.
need to see
Right.
the amount, the percent that's already been cut and how it compares to what the town has done?
Because there's a narrative that we didn't cut,
There's a strong narrative that we didn't cut.
that we didn't cut.
I think
And
all
I think
three of
the
these.
whole RTM needs this document, and maybe another document, to say this is going to destroy your district. And we've done a lot, especially, I know this district for 10 years, and we've done a lot to bring this together. There was a lot of turmoil prior to, there were so many superintendents, one that will remain nameless in my book, that, we brought this district together. I give Beth Hurler a lot of credit. She's been my partner, and we've done a lot to really take care. And during COVID, we couldn't have done it without the staff and everybody working together. So, and the board support,
Dean, did you have something?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So assume that someone's of a mind to say, you know what, this year, one more notch in that one more hole in the belt, okay? Suck it up. To what extent is the can being kicked down the road? In other words, today we're going to save money, but next year something's going to come back. Not in a non-quantifiable way, like it's going to harm student learning, which is real. It's hard to put a number on that one. Is there something here? Are there expenses we're going to be dodging this year if we go with what other people want? And we're just going to wind up paying for double later. We're just going to come back later. Then because if that's so, then that point ought to be made as well. That you're just kidding yourselves. We're not actually saving money. We're just stalling.
Pre-K and TK.
you're
Right.
exactly right, because look at what's happened to us with FY '23.
And risking penalties.
And this year,
Yeah.
trying to get through this year, it's not been easy. Everybody has been tightening their belt to the nth degree, just trying to get it through the year. So we really haven't gotten the budget we've needed in these past couple years. And, I don't want to be sitting here doing the same thing next year.
And we have some legal obligations we need to meet that are going to be at risk.
Right.
Are we courting lawsuits? Are we courting lawsuits?
Who, us?
Yes.
I
That's the rhetorical.
don't know, but
I hope not. I haven't heard of one.
Well, I think,
we're not carrying out our mandate.
right.
Yeah,
Right,
well, that's
so,
true.
that would be the
To educate,
penalties.
yeah.
There's possible penalties if we don't implement certain things in a certain timely fashion.
Well, and always special education has got to be taken care of by any town,
Right.
no matter what the costs are. If they go over, the town has to afford it. That's it.
Yeah. I think also another thing to include somehow in the presentation would be drawing a correlation between the growing fund balance.
Is
And-
that the fund balance, the actual?
Yeah, actually,
Does-
Jay and I were
what's the-
talking in
What's the final number in the corner?
No, this is the
Oh.
8-year history.
8-year history, yeah,
Shows the
so.
progression
Do
that
we
Dean
have this
referred
year's?
to.
Because the number
Do you have
keeps
digital
changing.
version of this to send around to the whole board?
I can get them, yeah.
Because, and I just had a question about the fiscal year ending 2024. The $36,366,466, that does that
All
include?
funds. That's all funds.
Right.
See, unfortunately, this is the only one. This is the actual fund.
So this is the general fund balance?
That's the general.
That's the number to look at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, those others, well, I don't know what the,
I had heard the 36 because I added the 2.2 when impact aid came in April 2nd.
So do we know what the,
Called it 38.2.
is there, what's the state requirement for the general fund or the rainy day fund? Do we know?
no, it's a
And
town council
What's the
policy,
town council policy?
18%.
So we're
It's been gradually
overfunded.
going up.
We're overfunded. What are we saving up for?
Well, it has
Are
to,
we gonna buy an escalator to nowhere?
yeah, no, it had to do, it had to do,
Is
at
it,
least-
we're gonna have a really nice swimming pool?
at least when I was there, it had to do with bond rating agencies looking at the town's solvency, okay? How much was in there, and what number would they like to see? And that was very important when we borrow money, because the more we had in there, the more favorable our credit rating, and the lower the interest rate we would pay when we borrowed money.
Yeah.
And is there an
And
interest that they make on that 38 million?
That I don't know.
I
It should be
asked,
invested
I
somewhere
asked Mark
safely.
about this, or not Mark, John. I apologize.
Wow, you're going back.
I don't know why.
Maybe we should
I
ask.
asked him, at what point does our credit rating change? And he didn't have an answer for that. It's just a risk. But and then I asked, are there other towns that have had their credit rating change? I'm sure that other towns have had credit ratings change. So we live in there's a lot of districts in this state. We could probably look back and say, all right, did their credit ratings change when they hit 15%? And then I'm sure there's lots of other things that come into it, like their total bonds and stuff. But there must be other resources besides just the scare factor of you need to have, you need to have an 840 credit score to be able to buy a car. I mean, there must be more to it than that. And it seems like this is ballooning. So that 4%.
When we need,
We
need it now.
We need, 1% of that fund balance to, right?
to get us through.
Or, no, I'm sorry, not 1%, but
17 to 19. Maybe it was getting ready. for
My
the
guess is
schools.
that the percentage now, it's just a guess on my part, but I don't do credit rating, is that it's much higher. When I was there, 7.5% of the budget was the recommended figure. That was our fiscal policy.
I'm hearing 15 now.
Because to get it, and the ideal point, we were told by the prior town manager, was about 10%. But to do that, and we always relied on bringing in a little more money than we thought and spending a little less money than we thought we were going to spend, and that differential was socked away to build up to the 7.5. And then we had an opportunity, so how do you go from 7.5 to 10? You couldn't do that in 1 year. And people we like to say, this is a bad year, let's not put any money toward that. So I kept it that 7.5 for a while. And then there was an opportunity to actually raise it to the 10. I figured that's where it would stay, to be honest with you. I have not watched it. I have not actually cared. But it sounds like it's a very healthy percentage, or maybe an unhealthy percentage, of the town's budget. So while I could accept the story that bond rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, might like to see 10% put away, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that 18%, or whatever the thing is now, is a little on the rich side, especially
think
since we're way past 2008.
15% is the number I'm hearing.
Well, 18 is the current policy, according to a prior council. But the actual is 21.2 or more. We don't really know the exact figure.
it said 22% in the budget.
Yeah, I know, but does that include the 2.2 million we just got on April 2nd?
No, I don't think
Right,
it
and,
does.
and the 1.4 figure also you mentioned.
Well, that includes, that's the overage of all the revenue that we've brought in.
Right, that's already in the general fund?
That probably is in the general fund because it's not in my pocketbook.
Right.
It's not in our, it's
So all
not in
all
our
of the
checking account.
boards, all of the money that comes back from grants and things is going into,
The EFT on April 2nd,
Fungible.
the EFT on April 2nd for 2.2 million said to the benefit of the Groton Board of Education.
Say that again?
The EFT, the Electronic Funds Transfer confirmation, said it was.
I'd be curious to see how other towns do that.
Said it was for the
It
benefit
did,
of the
but it
board.
didn't,
But it didn't actually come into our
Well,
accounts.
it did, but they said, what is this, right? I think it came to their account.
Now, don't get me wrong. The town still does provide funding for education. That 2.2 million reduces the taxpayer burden. It's one of many revenue streams, such as ECS and everything else. But at this point, it's increasing the fund balance, and therefore it should be used to reduce the taxpayer burden.
That is taxpayer money to begin with. That's how it got,
Right.
yeah,
So
a
what,
lot of it anyway.
I was wondering, may I?
go ahead.
I've lost
You've lost
track,
track.
but please.
No, I'm watching my staff too. They have a long
Yeah,
drive
yeah,
home, so
yeah.
I want them to be able to go.
Would it be,
Especially
could
Sam.
it be useful to ask CAPS and CABE what the predominant process is in the state?
Again, there's no legal requirement for impact aid to go to the board, but it is used, for education through the town budgetary process. So
I guess
I just
get-
want people to know that there are all these sources of income over and above
What we predicted.
local tax. I mean, it's still our money, whether we're paying it into the state and getting it back or the federal government, but
There's a logic.
relief for
There's a
the
logic
local.
to that, but there's another logic that's also useful. If I'll call it an agency, whether it's a governmental agency or a private foundation, gives us a check to benefit the education of our children, that's a form of contractual relationship that means that the money needs to be used for the education of the children. It means that it's not that the town would be doing anything wrong in what they spend on, but it's spending money perhaps that was dedicated, maybe in some cases actually voted on by a body, to be used for the education of children. I'm just like to know how other school districts, if they're experiencing the same thing we are, and I would think Caps and Cabe could find out for us.
one other thing I just want to mention is Dave McBride hit it on the head, Counselor McBride, that this reduction is totally based on health insurance, and this is a promise we made to our staff, that we would provide this coverage. And so I just believe that we should be made whole so that we can continue to meet that promise that we made,
That's right.
and not make cuts to the very people that we made a promise to in order to cover the cost of the promise.
I agree.
These promises and contracts that are approved by the council, if for no other reason than that they simply never voted to, not, ultimately, any agreements that we
Right, make.
make go before the council.
That's right.
And they have to say, no, we don't like it, but they don't. So they effectively legally approve our contracts. So it's not
Yes.
just our hands.
No, that's right.
That are
That's
dirty,
right.
if you will, with the contracts. They can't say, we don't like the contract. They,
Yes,
year after year after
They-
year, they go along with our,
they could have vetoed any of those contracts.
right, but they don't. And there are reasons for it, of course, but,
Right.
they're our contracts, they're town contracts.
And town council has been, really, in the years I've been here, has always had a representative sitting, especially for GEA and AGSA,
Yes.
with us.
Yes. Okay.
Question, just,
You did it once.
has there ever
For a lot of years.
Yeah.
been a situation where we're over our budget, right? And I mean, they fund us, like, if we're over, they fund us, right? I'm just saying, so I know we always say like, oh,
We'd have to
yeah.
go to them, though, and ask for appropriations, so that's.
Exactly,
ahead.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, we
I don't
probably,
recall ever doing that.
Not in my 10 years.
No,
Not in your
we have not
tenure,
asked
okay.
for a supplemental.
okay.
However,
when
one
Mike
year when
first
the
got
town was
here-
in trouble, we took $250,000 out of our insurance reserve and turned it over to the town. I'd have to go back and figure out the year. Dr. Ackerman has never let me live it down. And I'm now going to recognize her. But she's going to turn on her microphone.
And you need to talk louder in yours.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody, the town in particular, that when we have had money left over at the end, and I think Jay is talking about this, we have given it back to the town historically. I've always opposed that, but that's what we did. So there you are, Jay.
We've done that.
Thank you. Yep, she's
Yeah.
never let me live it down.
Jay?
Dean?
I want to make a suggestion, because I bet this isn't going to be the last time we go through this. I hope it is, but I suspect that, we're in for more. In the future, this is thinking outside the box, because we're talking amongst ourselves. This is kind of like the rah-rah session in the locker room, and let's go out and get them. What if we break up into two groups, and one group plays devil's advocate? That would be a way to hone our arguments.
Moot court.
Sounds crazy, but think about it.
Well, I am concerned about staff. They all have to be here very early again in the morning, so unless there's anything.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
Yeah.
putting up
Thank
with
you
us.
for this very last-minute meeting.
Just a quick question about the RTM. And so the committee meetings tomorrow, the education committee's meeting tomorrow night
Yes,
Town Hall Annex.
at the Town Hall Annex.
Yes.
At
And I think we'll have people there.
what time is the start?
6:30.
6:30 start. And there's no public comment available, but that wouldn't stop anyone from sitting in the gallery
No.
yes.
and holding a sign.
I think that's why the
In case
venue
anyone's so
changed.
inclined.
Yeah.
So,
And
now,
I think our teachers have written postcards, and there will be a special delivery.
all right. Now, will the chair and the superintendent be interacting with the committee?
I would assume so. I mean, that's what's always happened. It's usually in a little room, and we sit there, we have a conversation. I don't remember it like being like a town council where we're going item by item in the book, but I think it's more of a conversation. I kind of would like to show them this document about what we've already cut, and we are going to meet with Mike Whitney first thing in the morning, just to have a quick conversation. And then I think he needs to know what's at risk. You know, I've actually put it out to the public. Here are some things that could be at risk, and, you
I
know.
believe that the chair of the committee can determine who they're going to recognize. Past practice has been that,
The chair can recognize anyone they choose.
right, and I
Yeah,
believe
that's the
that,
rules.
I believe that past practice has been that they did,
Yeah.
so.
Now,
In the committee.
there
I
was.
would love for them to hear from more board members, because I think that's been helpful in the past.
So I'm planning to be there as well, so feel free to call me in anytime you choose or you feel it's appropriate.
Well, I
or-
think we'll all be at the,
Okay.
I hope we'll all be at the table.
I should hope so, too.
Yeah.
I did send an email to the town manager expressing my concerns about the moderator's email regarding the May 1st meeting, and he responded. I don't think he really understood what I was arguing, as far as the ex officio status does not matter when it comes to being a presenter, right? It's not like we're interacting with a meeting as one of the deliberators. We'll be up there to answer questions and to advocate for the budget that we approved. So,
I think there's the rule, I put it out there for families and parents and others who wanted to get up in front, but they do have public session on the May 1st, and people can come up to the microphone.
yes, yep, citizens petitions, you can do 5 minutes, just state your name and your address, and that's good to do, and I'm planning to speak at that time too, because I'm not sure if the moderator is going to allow anyone who is not the superintendent and not the chair of the Board of Ed to sit at the presenters table during the back and forth when the full RTM, analyzes the budget and is deliberating on whether or not to restore. Which, again, I think it would be valuable to have as many board members as we can available to speak to the budget that we approved. Because we all have different perspectives on that. So that is something we may need to kind of press in a little bit on, as far as like clarifying the terms, what constitutes an ex officio member and when that applies, versus what constitutes a presenter of a department, from a department, to Dean's comment from the other night. When we're presenting as a budget item, we are actually a department of the town. So that'd be like, the moderator is saying the director of public works can't sit at the table. The director of public works is not an ex officio member of the RTM. So that's something we may need to get cleared up before the May 1st meeting, if we want to have our full team on the field, or as much of a team as we can muster.
I'm sorry, Dave.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the charter says that the chair of the board is an ex officio member of the RTM, an ex officio, and the mayor as well, and other ex officio members have all the rights that the RTM members do. In other words, they have a right to be recognized by, they can say, Mr. Moderator, I want to speak, and the moderator has to recognize them in turn and all of that. The only thing they don't get to do is they don't get to vote.
Right.
Now, anybody else has the privilege of being recognized if the moderator so wants to. So that's about as far as you can go. Jay could do all the talking. He has to be recognized by the moderator as an ex officio member. But the rest of us can't, as I read the charter.
But I guess I'm misunderstanding, the context is different when they're analyzing budget items, because,
Right.
you know, as a member of the RTM last term and the term before, you know, there was many times we had directors of different departments up there.
You want to hear from them, but theoretically, you don't have to hear from anybody. The RTM or the
Right.
council, or the board even, could function without having any of the staff, any of the directors, any of the management in the room. We could make our own decisions. So, but it's a good idea to say, okay, you're the chief of police, tell us about your budget.
Right?
Right.
But the chief of police doesn't get to sit at the dais.
Right. No, and that's, I'm not trying to argue
Yeah.
that point. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to say that, like, you know, the same way that, you know, every department comes before, you know, is usually invited to speak to their budget item.
Right.
And they can, you know, bring whoever they need, they feel they want to have speak to that. Usually it's allowed, same as we at the town council. Those of us who were able, you know, showed up and helped defend the budget.
I suppose, since Jay would effectively be like a member of the RTM, just can't vote. A member of the RTM, if an RTM member could say, oh, I'd like to hear from Matt, then Jay could do the same thing. So if no RTM member is inclined to listen to recognize anybody, to say, oh, I have a question, Jen, if they're not inclined, then at least we have Jay to do that. So Jay could ask the questions, you know, Jen, could you tell us about Matt? Adrian, could you tell us about, your voice is best, you're going to be good.
I guess that is a workaround, depending on the situation.
I have one question before we adjourn. My understanding is that the resignation letter was formally submitted.
Yes.
Did you discuss the process for filling it?
Yes.
And are we going to do the same process? I wasn't here.
Right.
Are we
Yeah.
going to do the same process as last time and invite people to apply and then do interviews?
Yeah, I believe we wanted to use past practice unless anybody objects.
No.
We're
We were
looking for an
advised by
interim right
Ian.
now.
We were advised by Ian,
Oh,
yeah, the board
I'm sorry.
vacancy.
wrong one.
We were advised by Ian that at least the one party that's operative here no longer sends.
The Democratic Town Committee no longer sends endorsements forward
Right.
for
So,
positions like this.
so it is our job then to advertise and people have been invited to send their letter of
I
interest.
know we have to focus on the budget, but maybe we can start the process by advertising and at least collecting some information as rapidly as possible.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Ackerman, did you have something?
I certainly do. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you all.
Seconded by Dean. Thank you. With no objection, we're adjourned.